Get ready to blast off into the incredible world of brain-computer interfaces. Neurocareers doing the impossible is taking you on a journey to meet the fearless pioneers pushing the boundaries of what's possible. In this special series, we'll be shining a spotlight on the nominees and winners of the International BCI Award, one of the biggest and most prestigious awards in the BCI world. You'll hear from BCI professionals as they share their revolutionary work and get a behind the scenes sneak peek at what it takes to be a winner. So, buckle up, grab a snack, and get ready to be amazed as we explore the impossible becoming a reality in the world of BCIs. But before we blast off, I want to give a big thanks to the co-host of this BCI Award edition on our podcast, Dr. Christoph Guger and GTech Medical Engineering. When I was a faculty member at the University of Cincinnati and Cincinnati Children's Hospital Medical Center, my team and I did some pretty amazing stuff for patients needing epilepsy surgery. We would put special sensors, also called grids, directly on their brain to prepare for surgery and create maps of their brain in a much faster and safer way than is usually done. It's called high gamma mapping, and it lets us figure out in just a few minutes the essential parts of the brain that need to be spared during surgery. Can you imagine? You can create a map of language, motor, and even mass processing in no time. It was the first time this innovative technology was used at Cincinnati Children's Hospital Medical Center. When I moved to Florida, I established the first functional brain mapping and BCI program at Florida Hospital. I continue to use high gamma mapping to help epilepsy patients avoid losing their ability to speak or move after surgery. But even cooler than that, I created brain computer interface studies that let patients control things with their brain in real time. Our patients could even spell words with incredible speed by just using their brains. No hands involved. I also discovered that brain computer interfaces could help patients move their chronically impaired hands or legs years after a stroke when not much else could help them. So, I started working with the faculty from Advent Health University to help these patients restore their ability to use their hands. I received special training for it, and it's still mind blowing how cool it is. My favorite part of what I do is teaching. At my established Institute of Neuro Approaches, I've integrated all my experience and knowledge into a unique course on brain computer interfaces. With graduate neurobiology students, we started with theory, and then I gave them the BCI equipment so they could have hands on experience working with BCIs. It significantly improved the way students learn, and they absolutely love this practical part of learning how to use neurotechnology. And all of this was made possible thanks to GTech's awesome brain computer interface technology. They have everything from high tech up to 1024 channel EEG systems to wearables, tools for neuro rehabilitation, such as the medical grade system recoveries and educational kits with unicorn hybrid plug for learning how to work with BCI technology. But the most important part is their support and care. I have enjoyed working and collaborating with Dr. Christoph Guger and GTEC employees for over 15 years, and I hope for many more successful years ahead. So, if you are interested in GTEC's brain computer interfaces and neurotechnologies, check out their website at gtech.at. It's worth it. And keep in mind, I do not receive any financial support from GTEC and share my honest opinion supported by many years of experience working with their equipment. Dear Neurocareers podcast listeners, welcome to the BCI Award Neurocareers podcast series, where we bring you inspiring stories from the forefront of neuroscience and neurotechnologies. In this episode, we have the pleasure of featuring Elena Losanno, a brilliant PhD student from Scuola Superiore Sant'Anna in Pisa, Tuscany, Italy. Elena's groundbreaking project, an implantable brain-body interface using intrafascicular stimulation to restore heart functions, was awarded second place in the prestigious International BCI Award 2022. Join us as we dive into Elena's remarkable research journey, where she explores innovative solutions to restore hand functions through an implantable brain-body interface. Her work combines the field of neuroengineering and rehabilitation to make significant strides in improving the quality of life for individuals with impaired hand movements. Through this engaging conversation, Elena shares her insights into the development and application of intrafascicular stimulation, showcasing how this technology holds the potential to restore lost functionalities and empower individuals to regain control over their hand movements. So get ready to be inspired as we delve into the fascinating world of neurotechnology and witness the impactful work of Elena Losanno and her team. Tune into the BCI Award Neurocareers podcast and explore the exciting possibilities that lie at the intersection of neuroscience, technology, and human potential. Welcome, Elena. It's such a pleasure to have you today on our podcast. I appreciate you coming. And can you tell our listeners where you are joining us from today?
Hello, everyone, and thanks for inviting me to this podcast. So right now I am in Prato, which is in Tuscany. It's 1 hour from Pisa, but yeah, I live here, but then I work at Scuola Sant'Anna in Pisa. And so yes, I am in Italy, and yes, I mostly work from home, and then I go once or twice a week to Pisa at the office.
Wonderful. And can you tell us briefly about yourself and also maybe some interesting fact about the university you're studying at? It's so interesting to get to know just little bits and pieces about different academic places around the world.
So I am a PhD student at the Biorobotics Institute in Scuola Superiore Sant'Anna. And so I am actually at the end of my PhD, so I'm about to discuss my thesis soon. And I have a bachelor degree in biomedical engineering from University of Pisa, and then a master degree in bionics engineering from University of Pisa and Scuola Sant'Anna jointly. And then, yes, I have started this PhD in biorobotics. And so I am under the supervision of Professor Silvestro Micera. And he's both professor in Pisa, but also at Scuola Sant'Anna, but also at École Polytechnique Fédérale de Lausanne in Switzerland. So he has 2 labs and many people that are working for him on different topics. So our lab is mostly related to the field of neuroprosthetics and neural engineering, but we work on many different topics. For example, I'm working on stimulation of the nerves to restore movement, but other students work, for example, on nerve stimulation to restore sensation and sensory functions, or also somatic functions. Then we are working also on robotic prosthetics, then modeling, neural modeling, then neural interfaces, and many other topics. And the same is for the lab in Switzerland. And so besides that, during my PhD, I have spent some months in Freiburg, in Switzerland, to collaborate in this project that I will tell about later, I suppose, which was about performing preclinical experiments in non-human primates to test this approach of nerve stimulation to restore hand function, and also to couple then this approach to brain-body interface, so brain control of the stimulation. So I spent some months there, and I have collaborated on this amazing project, which will be like, I hope it will be the stepping stone for the clinical trials.
Yes, absolutely. I don't doubt it at all that it will be. Maybe we can go a little bit into the past to see how did you come to do these amazing projects? Where did you get interested in this field of neurotech, neuroengineering? Maybe you can see anything even in your past, in your childhood, where you wanted to do something similar like this. And how did this past develop?
Yes, so I think that it started mostly from the master. So as I said, I did this master on bionics engineering, and in particular, I did the curriculum related to neural engineering. So from there, my interest in neuromodulation, in the field of neuromodulation in general, started. So maybe at the beginning, I was mostly interested into the restoration of sensory functions. For example, the tactile sensations, or like visual prostheses for blind people. But then I had this opportunity to spend some months still in Freiburg for my master thesis, doing this project on spinal cord, epidural spinal cord stimulation still in non-human primates. And yes, from that, I started to work in the field of motor restoration. So not restoration of sensory function, but more on restoration of movement. And then, yes, I liked the field, so I decided to apply for the PhD, and I was lucky to be recruited by Professor Micera, and so he proposed to me this project that had started in Switzerland, which was about restoration of hand functions. And also at the time, I think I believe that the complex system, the hand, so I was very inspired by the goal of restoring hand functions.
Mm-hmm. Yes, and let's inspire now our listeners and tell them more about your project. So what is this project about?
So first of all, I wanted to say that I was not alone, and actually I entered in this project in human primates that was already started in Freiburg. So I want to thank all the people that collaborated in this project, in particular Marion Badi and Evgenia Rossinova, and then Sophie Wurt. And then, of course, my supervisor, Professor Micera, and Soleiman Shokur. So just to list some of the people that worked on the project. So yes, the idea of the project is to test a novel approach to restore hand functions, because traditional approaches use muscle stimulation using electrodes which are placed on the surface, so on the skin, and this is called surface functional electrical stimulation. Or another approach is to stimulate the muscles using implanted electrodes. This is called intramuscular functional electrical stimulation. And so these two approaches have some advantages, but they also have some limitations. For example, if you stimulate from the surface, the selectivity that you can achieve is limited. And also you have rapid muscle fatigue. On the other side, if you stimulate the muscles with implanted electrodes, you need to implant multiple electrodes. So this approach is quite invasive, and the surgery is quite complex and long. So we propose an alternative approach, which is stimulating the peripheral nerves because in that case, you can use one single electrode to target multiple muscles, multiple hand muscles. So the idea is that you reduce the invasiveness of the procedure, and at the same time, thanks to the somatotropy of the peripheral nervous system, the idea is that if the neural interface is appropriate, then you can reach a good level of selectivity, similar to implanted functional electrical stimulation. So we have started in non-human primates, as I said, and we had very cool results because with one electrode in the median nerve and one electrode in the radial nerve, we were able to achieve a variety of hand movements, both flexion and extension movements, so multiple types of grasps and like hand opening and extension of the single fingers. And besides that, we then tested, as I said, an approach to control voluntarily the stimulation via using the brain activity. And in particular, we proposed a conceptually novel approach. So we use the principal components of the brain activity, which we recorded using intracortical electrodes. So Utah arrays inserted into the primary motor cortex. And we use the principal components of the neural activity to modulate the stimulation. So we restored the full chain of motor controls, the brain control of the intrafascicular stimulation. So before doing that, actually, we also tested this decoding approach over long term, because we wanted to check if it was stable and easy to learn. And so for doing that, we started using a cursor control task. So the monkey had to control not the stimulation in that case, but the position of the cursor, of a computer cursor on a screen, in order to reach visual targets that were placed in different positions. So we used simple tasks, but then we demonstrated that she could easily learn to perform this task using the brain activity, and that her performance remained stable over almost 4 months. So we were very happy about that. So after this preclinical validation, our idea would be to go in humans, of course, because so our target populations are patients with hand paralysis. So, for example, patients that had a stroke or had a spinal cord injury at the cervical level. So we have planned the pilot clinical study in patients with tetraplegia. In particular, in the first study, we recruit 2 patients to validate our approach at the very beginning, and then we plan to perform additional experiments in a larger samples of patients.
Yeah, thank you so much. Maybe you can tell our listeners a little bit more about those people whom you are trying to help. Yes, so who are those people, and what are the current state of technology that is helping them, or maybe not helping at all? So what is the current situation that they're in, and how your project might contribute towards improving their current state?
Yes, so as I said, are patients that had a stroke or a spinal cord injury. So these are patients these are 2 neurological disorders that affect the central nervous system, in particular stroke at the level of the brain. So it's damage of the brain, while spinal cord injury is an injury of the spinal cord. So in most of the cases, so for as regards stroke, in most of the cases there is paralysis, so motor impairment of the upper limb and in particular of the hand. And also in the case of spinal cord injuries, so depending on the level of the spinal of the injury, the motor and sensory functions below the injury are impaired. So often the injury affects the cervical, one of the cervical segments of the spinal cord. And in that case, so you have paralysis of the 4 limbs, so the legs, the trunk, and also the arms and the hands. So this is called like tetraplegia. So for these patients, so the traditional techniques to restore hand functions are, for example, physical therapy. So the physiotherapists perform exercises in order to make this patient let this patient recover some functions. So these approaches are effective only in some cases. So when the patients have some residual functions. while when for example, the injury is complete or the stroke is very severe, the paralysis after stroke is severe, in those cases, there is not a strong effect given by physiotherapy. Then for people with tetraplegia, another approach which is now being performed often is a surgical reconstruction. So you perform nerve or tendon transfers in order to recover, for example, a certain grasp, a certain type of grasp, and you lose, for example, the activation of a muscle that is not super necessary for activities of daily living. But also in these cases, so this approach can be applied only in some cases, and the functions that you can recover are limited. For example, you recover only one type of grasp. So neuroprostheses are the technological alternative. So in general, neuroprostheses are based on the electrical stimulation of the nervous or muscular system. So you want to restore movement by applying electrical stimuli. I would say that neuroprostheses can be separated into two main groups. One are neuroprostheses for rehabilitation, so therapeutic neuroprostheses, whose goal is to let the patients recover their voluntary functions. And then there are assistive neuroprostheses, whose goal is to be used in activities of daily living. So the idea is to use them to assist the patients every day. So the design of the two types of neuroprostheses should be different because the goal is different. So for example, for therapeutic applications, neuroprostheses which are based on non-invasive electrodes, for example, the surface functional electrical stimulation that I mentioned, is used also in the clinical practice, and it has shown results. But also in this case, it depends injury on the motor impairment of the patients. This approach is more effective in patients which are which does not have a severe impairment. So the device that had a great success was the freehand system, which was a device based on intramuscular electrodes. And now actually, unfortunately, the company is out of business, but they sell a lot of many devices among tetraplegic patients. So it was very successful at the time. But then currently, I would say that assistive devices, there are not great solutions. You can use non-invasive neuroprosthesis, but then maybe the functions that you can regain are limited. So some of these patients are not very happy about using those devices because they give limited functionality, and also because they have to don and off those devices every day. So I think that there is space for improving what is currently available.
Yes, definitely. And also, can you comment on the novelty of your project? You said that you used principal component analysis of the data that you were collecting. So what is the current state? And again, what is your input in this approach? What is your novelty?
So about the motor decoding part, as I said, we designed this approach, which is conceptually novel. So our idea started science studies that showed that our brain activity is confined in a low-dimensional space. So the activity of multiple neurons is correlated, so that you can reduce it into a low-dimensional space, which it is called the neural manifold. And it was also demonstrated that, in general, it is easier to learn a task that is consistent with this manifold, with this brain structure. So starting from this idea, we hypothesized that by using these dynamics to directly control an output variable, which was in our case first the coordinate, so the cursor position during the brain-machine interface part, and then was the control of stimulation in the second part. So we hypothesized that it would have been easier for the animal in this case, but in general for the subject, to learn to modulate this within manifold dynamics in such a way that compensates for recording instabilities. Because the problem of brain-machine interfaces is that they are unstable, because intracortical electrodes, they cause scar tissue next to the electrode, and this causes the brain activity to be unstable over time. So you're not recording always the same neurons, and this makes also the algorithm, the decoding algorithm, unstable. I mean, and they are not performing after some time. So you need to form a new calibration, or you need to develop some algorithms to perform an unsupervised calibration, an automatic and unsupervised calibration. So our idea was that the subject would have compensated for these instabilities through a plastic behavior. So the animal would have learned to change the neural modulation based on to compensate for the instabilities and to maintain high performance over long term. So, I mean, our decoder was very simple because, as I said, we just used, in the end, we computed the neural manifold by performing principal component analysis. And then we performed these online experiments in which neural dynamics was projected into this principal component space. And we used the dynamics of these principal components to control the cursor or the stimulation with the proportional modulation. So it was just a linear proportional conversion. But then we believe that the fact that the manifold is intrinsic and the fact that the manifold is intrinsic can let the subject learn to easily modulate the activity and also to maintain these over a long term.
Mm-hmm. Thank you so much. And I'm also very curious about working with a hand function versus a leg function. Why did you decide to start with the hand?
As I said, I think that the hand compared to the leg is very complex and also very inspiring because for us the hand is crucial to perform all the activities of daily living. So it's the way we interact with the environment. I mean, it's the tool by which we interact with the environment and with our body. So it's fundamental for humans. And of course, the degrees of freedom that the hand has are much more than the leg. I think there are 27 degrees of freedom because, of course, the joints of the hand are many. And so I think it is more challenging, to target the hand instead of the leg. But at the same time, of course, there are much more issues compared to coarse movements like those of the leg or those of the arm. So with the hand, you need to be much more selective the muscles are much smaller, and at the level of the nerve, they are the fascicles or the motor neuron groups that innervate different muscles are much more smaller, and sometimes they overlap. So it is much more difficult to be selective for hand muscles at the level of the nerve compared to the leg. But yes, at the same time, the hand it's very, it's cool. The human hand is cool, is unique, it's what makes us humans, I would say.
Mm-hmm. Yes, thank you. And what type of movements are you able to restore? Are these just very general coarse hand movements, or you also can stimulate finger function? So how narrow do you go into the restoration of function?
So first of all, hand flexor muscles are mostly controlled by the median nerve, while extensor muscles are innervated by the radial nerve. So we were targeting these two nerves, but then there is also the ulnar nerve, which is more specific for the small finger. The ulnar nerve is responsible for the lateral part of the hand, while the median nerve is more for the medial part of the hand. So we were targeting only the median and radial nerves. And for example, by stimulating the median nerve, we were able to evoke the single thumb flexion or the flexion of the 4 digits. So we were not able to individually target the 4 digits, but this is much more complex because there are tendons which are connected between the 4 digits, and also the intrinsic muscles of the 4 digits are also innervated by the ulnar nerve, which we were not targeting. So in the end, by stimulating the median nerve, besides the thumb flexion, we were able to elicit 3 types of grasps, which were a cylindrical grasp with the flexion of the 4 digits, then a pinch grasp with a the thumb, index and middle finger, and then a spherical grasp, so a more powerful grasp, which involved also the thumb. While by stimulating the radial nerve, which we were able to restore the extension of the wrist, so radial extension, then ulnar extension, and then also the extension of the isolated thumb, and also the extension of the 4 digits. So in monkeys, we performed a blind implantation. So our electrode, which I can describe in more detail, so it's an intrafascicular electrode based on a polyimide shaft with multiple active sites distributed along the shaft. And this electrode is inserted transversally into the nerve. So the idea is to use the different active sites to stimulate the fascicles that are inside the nerve in order to be selective for the different hand muscles. So in monkeys, we did this implantation blindly. So we did not open the epinevrium, which is the membrane that is out of the nerve. So we were not able to see which nerve fascicles we were targeting. While in humans, we plan to do a more targeted implantation. So our idea is so we will open the nerve epinevrium and we will identify the relevant fascicles by using intraoperative stimulation. And then we will cross those fascicles using the electrodes. So we plan to be even more selective than in monkeys. And at the same time, human nerves are bigger compared to monkeys' nerves because we used our experiments were performed in macaque monkeys, 3 kilograms monkeys, so that they were very small, like babies. So, we expect that we will be able to reach a higher selectivity in humans than in monkeys.
Yep, that makes sense. And now that you mentioned working with monkeys, how was the learning curve for you to learn to work with them? What were the challenges? What were maybe the unexpected or maybe even funny moments in your work that you experienced?
Actually, I haven't worked in contact with monkeys, so I was the one outside the room, recording the data in front of the computer and preparing the setup and this kind of stuff. Because, of course, if you want to work with animals, you need to have a certificate for that. And when I went to Freiburg in Switzerland, I did not have this certificate. So there were specific people that were interacting with the animals. But then I would say that in general, it's very difficult to work with animals. And with monkeys, they are much smarter than other animals. So for some aspects, this is funnier and maybe, it gives you more success in some way. But at the same time, yes, it is difficult to, sometimes they get distracted. So it is difficult to make them be focused on the task. And also, like my colleagues, for example, that had to train them to perform the motor tasks had many, many challenges in doing that. So, it's very difficult to train animals using food rewards. It's a very long process and you have to be patient and otherwise it's very complicated.
Yes, it is. It is. And I just want our listeners to hear that in order to really work with animals, people need to get certificate. It's a long process and very serious process, only with trained specialists directly working with them. So it's important to keep in mind.
Yeah, and also about the ethical process that is behind. Of course, there is an ethical committee that evaluates your study and the protocol you are proposing before letting you do your studies. And also, I think that this is, required if you want to perform then clinical studies in humans. Sometimes it is necessary to do tests in animals. For example, in our case, it was this because we applied to the ethical committee and to the competent authority for the clinical study, and they requested the preclinical data demonstrating the efficacy of this approach. Otherwise, they don't let you start with humans.
Yeah, absolutely. You also mentioned the idea that came to you to bring this innovative approach into your study. It came from already existing studies that were published. My question is, what else in the current development in neurotech, maybe neuroscience, inspires you? What other studies, what innovations, what technologies inspire you in your work and maybe even inspire ideas for future work you want to do?
Yeah, I would say that, yes, now I am in the field of neuromodulation, so I am super inspired by that. So I think that applying electrical stimulation to especially to the nervous system in general is super exciting for me, both to restore motor functions, but also for sensory functions, but also for autonomic functions. So, in my lab, we are working on those different topics, and I found them very cool and very inspiring. So I would say that yes. Now I believe that in the future I would like to remain in the field of neuromodulation.
How do you see the future of the field of neuromodulation? If we go 50 years from now, or maybe even 100 years from now, how do you want to see it? Or how do you think it will look like?
Yeah, so we have to understand many things. So, for example, when we target the peripheral nervous system with electrical stimulation, we know much more what is happening, what are the mechanisms behind. While, for example, now a stimulation of the spinal cord with epidural electrodes is becoming super popular. But I think that the mechanisms behind are a bit still unknown, because there you have also the descending commands from the brain that are together with the spinal circuits and with the peripheral processes. So I think we need to have a better understanding of what is happening. Also, for example, performing modeling, neural modeling of the spinal cord and of the stimulation in general. And then I think that one big point is to try to make those technologies widely accepted and widely available. So this would mean also like to reduce the cost of the technology, to simplify the surgical interventions and the implantation procedures. So I think that these points are super important. And also I think it is important to have a close contact with the patients. So we need to try to understand what are their specific needs and their specific hopes, so that we design our devices for their requests, and not just based on our intuition and what would be their preferences.
Yeah, absolutely. I absolutely agree with you that I think should come first the needs of the patients, because we have good imagination and we can come up with many different interesting things, but are they really relevant, yes, to our patients? So yeah, I agree. What was the biggest challenge for you in this project and how did you overcome it?
Now that we are about to start the clinical study, we have had many problems, not actually the ethical approval, but the approval from the competent authority. So the bureaucratic part of the study was very hard for me, but now I'm almost out of I have almost solved the issue, so I'm happy about that. For the preclinical study, a big issue that we had was for the brain control part. So since we didn't have any feedback from the animal, it was very difficult to understand what was happening. And so we had to do a lot of processing of the data to understand what was going on. But I think that if you put a lot of effort and you write down hypotheses of what is happening and you try to use the data you have to validate those hypotheses, I think that you can solve any problem you have.
Yeah. What are the skills that were absolutely necessary for you to complete this project?
I would say that from the technical point of view, not super skills were necessary. But of course, if you work in the neuroengineering and neuroprosthetics field, if you have some backgrounds of biosignal processing or software development for these real-time experiments, I think it is super useful. But then I also think that you can learn the technical skills on the field. So I think it is most important to have the so famous soft skills. So if you are a flexible and dynamic person with problem-solving skills, I think that you can manage everything in research. From the technical point of view, I think more the biosignal processing it was an important skill, yes.
Yeah, thank you. And now, why did you decide to submit your project for the BCI Award? Why do you think it was important for you?
Yeah, together with my supervisor, Sylvester, and also Soleiman Shokur, another senior scientist involved in this project, So we thought that it would have been a super opportunity. And so I think it's a way to get some visibility among important researchers in the field. And also we thought that our project could be considered because of the novelty. I mean, we did not do anything super complex, especially from the brain decoding part, because, as I said, our decoder was a very simple algorithm. But we thought that maybe this conceptual novelty could have been valued for the award. And so we decided to apply. It's a value, I mean, to have win this award.
Absolutely. And my deepest congratulations for you on this amazing accomplishment. What would be your advice for those who want to also submit their project for the BCI Award? What would be your recommendation to make this submission successful?
I think you have to present your project in a well-defined way, not only for the BCI award, but in general, I would say for a research project. So I think that you should well define a research question that you want to address, or a problem in general in a specific field that you want to solve. And you should well design a protocol that to try to solve this problem or to address this question. And then I think it is very important to present your results in an organized way so that the message you want to give is clear, so that the message is able to say how you address the research question you had and or the problem you wanted to solve. So I think that it is more like the organization of your idea and how you decided to solve the issue.
Yeah, thank you. And do you see any impact of this submission on your career or maybe even on the way you think about your next steps in research? Because I know that sometimes just submitting a project, summarizing it in your mind, helps you to reevaluate the project, yes, and start thinking about the next steps a little differently. So, anything that you noticed how this award maybe impacted you in any possible way?
From the visibility point of view, I think this was very important because I received many questions from students that wanted to work in our lab, for example. Then you're right about the fact that when you summarize, when you write down the project and your results, some new ideas comes out. But actually, so in this case, we already planned to do the clinical trial. So we had already, let's say, write down the things and thinking about what would have been the step after. So from that point of view, I would say that it did not have a super impact. But then, yes, I think from the visibility point of view, and also for me, it was super cool to see all the other projects and all the other interesting work that have been done in the field.
Yes, absolutely. You mentioned your team already quite a few times, and I would like to focus a little bit on that because we know that in the field of neurotechnology, it's really a multidisciplinary team approach is required to successfully complete projects. So, can you maybe tell a little bit about your team from this multidisciplinary point of view? You already named some of the people on your team, but who is doing what? Do we have neuroscientists, neurophysiologists, clinicians, behavioral specialists working with animals? So how does it all look like when put together? Who is doing what?
Yes, as you said, in general, I believe that it is super important to have multidisciplinary teams because you can gain a lot from the expertise and experience of people that have worked in different areas. So in our case, for example, in the preclinical study, so most of the people doing implementing the software for control or doing the signal processing were biomedical engineers. But then, of course, there were behavioral experts that were in contact with the animals, and then also neuroscientists, which I think are super expert for the motor control part, for the, in general, brain decoding. That neuroscience is the way to go. Then for the clinical study we are about to perform, the team is even larger. We have, of course, the clinicians. On one side, the neurosurgeons, which are hand surgeons that will perform the implantation of the electrode in the peripheral nerves. And then we have, of course, neurophysiologists, which will do the recruitment process of the patients. So they will check if those patients meet the eligibility criteria for the study. And also they will help us monitor the patients and acquire all the bio signals during the study. And then also we have microtechnology engineers, actually also for the study in monkeys, because the electrodes we use in monkeys and we will use in humans are manufactured at the INTEC Institute in Germany, in Freiburg in Germany. And these are microtechnology engineers. So that is another group of scientists. And then I would say that's it. But I think that so in general, in the field of neuroprosthetics, there are many different figures that would be, whose expertise is super useful to complete a project.
Absolutely. And what are your future plans? Are you planning to go to the postdoc, continuing with this project, or you are going to do something different, or you don't know yet? But what's going on with you right now?
Yeah, I haven't decided yet what I want to do in my life. If I want to stay in academia or not for the rest of my life. But for now, as we plan to do this clinical study, I will stay. So I would like to do a postdoc on that study. And in general, my plan is to work on neuromodulation projects that are going on in my lab in Pisa. So yes, for now, that is my plan. But then after, I don't know, I'm not sure. So I think that the research environment is super inspiring and challenging. So I like this part. But then to remain in academia, so to become a professor, it's a long process. So you really need to want that. Otherwise, it becomes very, very hard. So I'm still at the point that I don't know if I really want that or not.
Mm-hmm. What would be your advice to new aspiring PhD students who want to work in the field of neuromodulation?
First of all, it is important to be at the state of the art, so to do a literature review on what is going on in the field, and then also to study how electrical stimulation has an effect in the nervous system in general. So to study also more basic knowledge about that. And then I think that the experience on the field is the most important thing. So yes, if they manage to find a lab in which there are, for example, animal experiments based on neuromodulation, I think that from that you can learn a lot before doing experiments in humans. I think it's very important to have that type of experience.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. And what helps you to stay up to date on developments in the field? Are there any events, conferences, journals that you are participating or reading that help you to be current with what's happening?
In my lab, we are so many that, it's very easy to be up to date because everyone can bring some knowledge and we can learn from each other. And then, so besides that, I think it is useful, of course, to go to conferences and to meet people that are working in the field, to talk with them. So yes, I think that a very important thing is to talk with people in general and to ask questions when you have it. Also, I think that, for example, like important people in the field on like ResearchGate, for example, you are updated when an article comes out. So I think that is important. And also, I think, for example, review papers are super important. So when a review paper comes out, I would suggest that would be the first thing to read.
Yeah. Thank you. Another question is maybe you can recommend some specific events or conferences that people can attend to stay current in the field, in neuromodulation specifically.
Yeah, I would say that, of course, Society for Neuroscience is, it's well known and it's a big event, gathers many researchers from all over the world. So I think it's the first event that I would suggest. Then besides that, the IEEE conferences, for example, NER or EMBC, I think they are super good events to meet experts. And then, so besides that, I don't know, I have been in the World Congress for Neurorehabilitation, which was a more like clinical conference, but I think it's a good way to talk with clinicians and to, from their point of view, what it is needed. Because I also think that engineers should exchange ideas with the clinicians because they have experience with the patients, while we mostly stay in front of a computer and we don't know what is happening really in the clinics. So I think it is very important for that. And then, that would be the main conferences I would suggest.
Thank you very much. And the next question I ask all of our podcast guests, it's about doing the impossible. So maybe you can recall something that you thought that it's not possible, but then it proved to be possible. And how did you do that? How did you make that impossible possible?
So I would say that if you believe in something, and then if you put a lot of effort and passion in this, I think that you can make things that seem very hard possible. I think that is also super useful to, as I said before, so to discuss with people. I think the most important thing is to talk with people and to exchange ideas, because in that case you can see something that was not visible for you, but for another person was. So I think that this is the main way to solve problems. But then, yes, I think that if you put passion and after hard work, you can make what is hard possible.
Thank you. And for those who are interested in your work and who would like to get in contact with you, what would be the best way to do it and to learn about what you do and then how to connect with you?
LinkedIn would be the first way to connect with me. Otherwise, you can contact me directly on my email address, which will be in the notes of this podcast.
Okay, thank you. And as we are already going towards the end of our podcast, what would be your final advice or the message to our podcast listeners? What would you like to share?
For future PhD students, I would say that, so the main advice is to talk with people. So don't be afraid to ask questions when you need to ask, because I think that it's the most valuable process. Otherwise, you lose time in something that you could have solved in very, very quickly if you would have talked with other people. So I think the exchange of ideas with other people is very important.
So communication is the key. That's a great advice. Thank you so much, Elena. Thank you for being our podcast guest, sharing all your insights with our listeners. I appreciate it. And I wish you all possible success with your future studies. And I hope to see the impact they create soon. So thank you.
Thank you very much for inviting me.
Are you a fearless pioneer in the world of brain-computer interfaces? Do you have an amazing project that's pushing the boundaries of what's possible? Then we want to hear from you. The International BCI Award is one of the biggest and most prestigious awards in the BCI world, and the deadline for submission is September 1st. But don't worry, you don't need a top notch budget or equipment to be a nominee or a winner. All it takes is a great idea and the determination to make the impossible possible. So, submit your project now at bci-award.com or find the link in our podcast notes and join us on this incredible journey to explore the world of BCIs. And make sure to listen to our upcoming BCI Award Neurocareers podcast series for tips and tricks on creating a successful submission. Who knows? You might be the next nominee or winner of the International BCI Award and proudly showcase your nomination on your resume to impress potential employers and establish a successful career in neurotechnologies. But don't stop there. If you are looking for more guidance on succeeding in neurocareers, book a free consultation with me, your podcast host, Dr. K, at the Institute of Neuroapproaches. So, what are you waiting for? Let's make the impossible possible together.